Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 114 of the Watch William Podcast. The Watch William Podcast is a veteran-owned podcast that focuses on horology while sharing valuable resources with the watch enthusiast community. My name is Jason. I'm your host. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Episode 114 is going to be with Nicholas Farrell of DC Vintage Watches, or DCVW for short. Those of you in the watch game know it's a pretty cool place to find hard to find vintage Seikos, primarily amongst other stuff though. And Nicholas has done a great job curating an assortment of watches available for purchase, as well as finding some really hard to find pieces for some very special clientele. And this whole sit down is to talk to Nicholas about, ask questions about background, personal journey, what got him to this point, what he did before that might help him with this job, and then just kind of have a watch enthusiast chat with someone who finds some pretty cool pieces. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, man, the pleasure's all mine. This has been a chat I've been interested in for quite a while, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on board and discuss DC vintage watches.
I'm happy to be here.
In your overall journey as a watch enthusiast and how it got to this point. I think it's pretty cool. So first things first, tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick.
Sure. So I'm Nick, as you clearly already mentioned. So I'm the founder / CEO of DC Vintage Watches, but also we started a watch line, which I guess you would call a very small micro brand, about a year and a half ago in January 2024 is when we debuted the two watches, again, very small micro brand. For that. So I'm the founder and CEO of that company as well, which we can get into.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and mention it.
Sorry, say again?
Oh, go ahead and mention it.
Oh, yeah, sure. So Sycamore is basically something that I kind of willed into being, where I saw something, and it wasn't so much that I did all this market research to see what the market was missing. It was literally this is a design that intrigues me. I like it. I'm not finding it. I want to kind of put it out there. I'm already... we have watchmakers that work for us. We already have, we're already familiar with suppliers, majority of which are U.S. based. So let's do this. And it took quite a while to finish, actually, longer than I thought it would. Most of it was in the design process itself. Thankfully, like I said, the supply process wasn't that big a deal. It was more the design that took more time. I think total maybe 6 to 9 months, if I remember correctly, from having the idea to basically debuting it January 1st in 2024 and saying, these are available now in the shop. So
awesome.
They are very military influenced in design. It's a smaller one and a larger one. The larger one is very reminiscent of the Ben Russ Type 1, Type 2 case style, the asymmetric case style. The major difference being that it is all matte black PVD on it, including the dial. And the dial uses, when you say Arabic numbers, a lot of people, unless they're watch nerds like us and literally everyone listening, don't realize that, English numbers are Arabic numerals, but this one actually has Arabic language numerals, which is where our own English numerals get their basis from. So, and that's kind of a hat tip to my time as an Arabist in the U.S. government, both the intelligence community and at Department of State.
Awesome. Yeah, we used to joke about that because on our ships, we have draft markings, so you know how deep it is in the water. And we'd have to teach new people, hey, there's Roman, numerals, and then there's Arabic numerals. And they're like, no, they're not. They're just in English. We're like, no, bro, that's the font. The font is Arabic. And they're like, oh, so yeah, that's pretty cool. So then we're on the topic. Let's just get into it. So the name Sycamore, tell us about that. What's that evoke and where's it from?
So the Sycamore was just kind of so I actually spent some time in Beirut, in Lebanon, learning Arabic, and they have sycamore trees there. So it was kind of that was the early aughts. So yeah. I was in my mid-20s, I think. So just realized how long ago that was. I feel old. Great.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a throwback to that. That was an amazing time. I spent a summer at American University in Beirut, and I also spent almost 2 years living in Cairo learning Arabic. But Beirut is infamous for its nightlife. And I very much, particularly in the summer, I very much got a lot of that mid-20s. Yeah. You get the idea. And good so times. It was a great time. I'm still friends with some of the people that were in the program To this day, we're still talking. One of them bought one of the watches actually. So
Nice.
that's where the name kind of came from for me.
Yeah, the
So
Sycamore is on their flag.
what's that? It
The
is.
Sycamore is on
Well,
Lebanon's flag.
the pine tree type thing. Yeah. Agreed. No, and it's also terribly ironic because there's not a lot of trees left in Lebanon. I mean, there are some at the higher reaches in the mountains, but much like Los Angeles, where I'm talking from right now, and I was talking about this the other day with my kids, and that is in the span of the same day, you can be up in the mountains and then in the afternoon be on the beach, and the same is true for Lebanon. And that was some of the things I did while I was there, like spend a lot of time on the beach because AUB had its own private beach, which is amazing when you have to study for a test. You go out on the beach and you're studying Arabic and it's just you're sunning. It's amazing,
Yeah.
And then you go up in the mountains with these beautiful vistas in front of you. So it was a great time in my life, and this is kind of remembrance of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great name. Sometimes I have some issues with some names. I feel like sometimes people just use name generators. I feel like sometimes, like the name is trying to evoke something, but it's just kind of like a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
It all, and I've had this discussion with plenty of my buddies before, and you have to have like the perfect meld of like a good name that actually prints well on a dial, right? And what font are
Which
you
we learned.
using? It's difficult.
Yes.
I mean, some brands have been through like 4 or 5 iterations
Yeah.
of their logo,
And
so I know it's a difficult thing.
it's a lot of like pretty much anything we do, and it's easy to claim this, but I think kind of the time that we've been around, and we've founded DCVW in 2012, so been around almost 15 years. Pretty much anything we do is not for marketing purposes. It's because there's a reason, and like a genuine reason at that. So like hence Sycamore, hence naming the models. Like one model is named the Wolf, which is, as I talk about on the website, is named after a dog that a street dog, a street German Shepherd, like a mixed breed that I found on the streets of Cairo and adopted and brought back to the United States. And he passed in 2013 after living, God, he was, no, not 2013. I'm sorry. He passed in 2019 after living 13 years. So that's in remembrance of him. So there's a story there, which I think is really incumbent upon, particularly watches. Like we love these things because of the stories they tell.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think that's pretty cool. I think sometimes it can, I think in the best of times, it niches down your brand to some very hardcore, loyal, consumers or whatever, and they're going to follow you and see where the journey goes for a while. And I think that's important. Instead of casting a wide net and just trying to get everybody to get a lot of money where it could be a flash in the pan, you're kind of creating a story and the people are along for a ride for that story. I think that's pretty cool. I think some of the best independent micro brands, like, see, I always have this conversation with people. To me, a micro brand is just like, hey, we're making small numbers, and maybe there's not a lot of original design there yet, right? I think though that if you're pumping out small numbers and you're doing a bunch of original design stuff, then I just call you an independent, because you're actually doing some stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the numbers always have everything to do with it as far as you should punch out, because there are some people out there putting out smaller numbers of watches, but their original designs, or for the most part, they're taking something from a long time ago and like they've been inspired and do some good stuff with it. But that's awesome. Yeah. So I'll make sure I put all those links in the show notes so everyone can see them. It'd be fun to check out. So real quick, I always forget to do the wrist check. I've been pretty good. I think I'm on like a 10 episode run where I actually do the wrist check. And it's funny, in interviews, I never forget to do the wrist check. When it's me just running my mouth as a solo show, I almost always forget to do a wrist check. So I always go first, let the guests go second, because they talk about their watch as long as they want. But you're getting a surprise here, Nick.
There you
go. Honor of our conversation, I got the 1970 Heritage like reissue, the Ice Diver, the SPB 265. I love a turtle.
Talk about stories behind a watch.
Oh yeah, and I like a cushion case, and it's funny because me and my buddies had to talk about this. I'm retired Navy, and people are like, "You're gonna get the real Willard?" And I'm like, "Dude, I was in the Navy for 20 years. If I get a Willard, it's gonna be a fun one." And I found it for a pretty good price. I mean, I've been saying it. No one at the price point does dials like Seiko. Maybe there's some people catching up.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Seiko, I'm telling you what, man, that's Seiko dials for me are like a 92 mile an hour fastball down and away. Like I'm gonna reach out and ping that thing every single time. That's my bread and butter. And yeah, so I'm pretty happy with it.
Did you have that when you were in the Navy?
No, I wish. Okay. No, all I ever wore, I should have brought it. are G-Shocks, and their numbers are so long I don't even try to memorize them. But I always wore G-Shocks in the Navy because they were available in the ship store. I've discussed this a
Yeah,
lot. I mean,
yeah.
you're talking like 50 back then, $50, and I had them forever. I had a GA 100, which was the anti-digi with the white hands. I had that for a long time. That was my second one, and then I had the one with the 3 sub dials at the top. And then I also had one that had like, it wasn't a speed bar, but it was like the seconds went across, almost looked like a speedometer. I forgot the name of that, the
Mm,
reference number for that one. But those are the ones I had because they were super reliable, man. Like
yeah.
you could just wear them. And, I was an engineer in the Navy. So it's like we were always running around doing engineering stuff. I was a firefighter actually, so damage controlman. So
So
always doing
you were
drills
banging it on bulkheads and
all the
all sorts
time.
of stuff. Yeah.
All the time. And I'm not a small guy, man. I've never been small. Like I came in the Navy at 245. I retired at like 255, 6'2". So the older ships had more room. Like when I
Mm,
went to the newer ships, like there was no room anywhere. I'm like, I was
yeah.
bumping into stuff, just trying to exist, bumping into stuff and everything. So
No, I bring it up because I'm sure you follow the Restorian, right?
yeah,
So I was like, you need to send some of those photos to him, and he'll hold them for like 10 years. So I put them up. No, I was actually joking with him the other day, but half serious, like most conversations. And I was like, we need to track down PX catalogs from the 80s, 70s, 60s, whatever, and that will help you in identifying watches that
yeah,
these archival footages that you're seeing, photos or otherwise, because just like you said, people were buying them because that's what was available. So like that would narrow down from the whole world of watches to in this year this photo was taken. Here's the catalog at the PX. I don't even know if PX made catalogs. I've been in PXs, but I don't know that I've ever seen an actual print catalog.
yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I came in the Navy in '93, and they've always had mailers and flyers and stuff like
Mm,
that, right? But I do know they're like any other business. They have buyers,
yeah,
right? So I mean,
yeah, or
there's
that. Yeah,
there's got to be stuff provided
there's
to them,
records
especially
somewhere.
back in the day when you didn't have the internet, right? Like they weren't
Mm-hmm.
able to
Yep.
email like a
Good point.
PDF of
Good
what they
point.
got available. So someone had to send them something like, here's our catalog for 1978. And this is what we have to offer if you want to put it in the exchange. And then I guarantee there's plenty of retired, because back in the day, that stuff was all done by military people. It wasn't
Yeah.
done by contractors and civil
Nope.
servants as much.
No, it was not.
You know what I
No,
mean?
I
So
this is why I love going to like estate sales because my wife loves mid-century modern furniture. So I love going to
mm,
estate sales around the LA area, and I'm just hoping one day someone's gonna have like a Foot Locker full of those flyers or what. Oh my god! And they will have no idea why I'm so excited that they have that because it is not even like there's no commercial venue for me here. It's just literally as a historian, I want to document that for them, scan them, put them up on the
yeah.
website, which we already do on other things, and just have it there for other people to access.
Yeah. Well, that's the awesome part about your guys' website. And I have a buddy of mine who's an independent dealer, and I kind of gave him the idea. I'm like, all the great websites, regardless of whether they sell stuff or not, the great ones give you free information, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like people have talked about Teddy Baldessar. I'm like, well, Teddy Baldessar has given people free information on watches forever. Like, does he sell watches? Yes. Does he talk about the watches he sells? Yeah. But I'll tell you what, if you go to his and look at the blog, it's never like selling. It's like, this is just about this watch. And then like the list of stuff at certain prices, or the list of stuff for different things that you can do with the watches, that's all free stuff, especially if you're a new enthusiast. Mark from Long Island, dude, the best, I will hands down, the best free stuff ever. Like
And then
he teach,
I go ahead. Go ahead.
no, that Watch and Learn series by Mark at Long Island Watch,
Yeah. Yeah.
dude, that's how you know he's a gangster of love, man, because that's just real free stuff, like free info, like how not to mess your watch up, how to use poly watch, like all these different things.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that because I know exactly what you're talking about as far as having that free information out there because I will literally like everyone like I bet even Teddy and Eric Wynn every now and again will pop on eBay just to see what's on there, and so I'll go on there and I'll see our stuff screen grabbed. Not the watch, but the history, and someone selling one of those watches, and it'll be like literally screen grabbed from our website, and it's a mixed feeling, but
No,
I
I know
get
what
it,
you
and
mean.
at least I'm contributing something. So
I
that's
try to cite. I'll tell you what, at
oh yeah, no,
watchrolling.com,
yeah,
we cite. But I heard you say mid-century modern, right? And you also, you live in Los Angeles. So I'm originally from the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area.
there you go.
I'm from the Inland Empire, born and raised. I'm from Hemet, right? And then you mentioned mid-century modern. and your wife likes mid-century modern furniture.
There it is.
So,
Oh man, I gotta mention that to her. I don't think she's tracking on that.
Neutra, man, I love Neutra. And the funny thing is, you know,
This is me literally taking down the note right now for
yeah,
her.
the weather allows it, right? Like the weather allows mid-century modern out there, right? And you have all the different, you know, this is an architecture podcast, but if people don't like it, so what? Because the Watch Rolling podcast is going to become more well-rounded in the future. So we're going to talk about lots of different things. But
I love it.
The whole mid-century modern stuff, man, it's a vibe, right? It's like when you watch film noir or you watch some like Michael Mann stuff or all these things, and it's just a whole vibe. And growing up back home, you know, the first time I got exposed to mid-century modern was in Palm Springs, and I was doing like construction as a teenager, and I just thought these are the most beautiful homes ever, man. You know, and granted, I like a log cabin as much as anybody else, but still. And speaking of California, you can go from a log cabin to a mid-century modern home in like an hour and a half if you want to, in the mountains. But I digress. We're not here to talk about mid-century modern. Eventually, we're going to get to that point. But we're here to talk about you, DC Vintage Watches. You've already discussed a little bit. Just tell us some high points, how you got the watch enthusiast bug, and then how you ended up here.
No, so like I feel like many people that are listening to the podcast, this was something that I got from my father. So he was always, and continues to be, to the best of my knowledge, into watches. His aesthetic mostly lent towards like Tag Heuer, and honestly, it's not really my forte. Although it's starting to become more popular, so we will carry that on occasion, like the more garish Tag Heuers. But again, not really my thing. But it did excite that bug in me to learn that there's these little miniature things, that these work of arts, that particularly when you get away from the quartz and you start looking at mechanical watches, and you're just like, you take that case back off, careful not to touch anything, but you're like, I can't believe, like, there's so many little parts where I can't believe it does what it does. So that got me into it, and like a lot of people, I found myself starting with vintage Seiko, because that is, and probably always will be, that gateway drug into collecting watches.
Yeah.
From then it just kind of took off, and from then it kind of spread from there to not Tag Heuer, but Heuer before it became Tag, and to, like most things, to Omega. And then like these days, now and again, like we do sell Rolex every now and again. We do source it every now and again, but not often, because it's something that I want to make sure, because I do most of the sourcing myself because I just enjoy it so much. I want to make sure I know it front and back. Like, I want to stand behind what we sell. And like Omega, Heuer, and Seiko, we have that in spades. That's not a problem. But when it comes to some of these more, besides Rolex, esoteric brands, like a lot of the stuff we sell, I have in my own collection. So I know it front and back already. So I want to learn Rolex more. And it's literally, I'm looking at my bookcase right here. I have all these Rolex books that I'm getting my way through along those lines.
Oh, man. Yeah, I got a couple too. I got like 3 or 4 because I'm really trying to learn it.
I see one of them behind you right now, the red book.
Yeah, we should.
I think I have that.
We should do a book report podcast. You know,
I agree.
We bounce ideas off each other. But speaking of, you know, so all these vintage stuff, what do you got in your wrist? Because we never finished out the wrist check.
Speaking of Heuer, so this is a Heuer 844 that was early in Heuer's for the awkward way of showing the wrist. So early on, Heuer, when they made the professional series, they started being made in France, and these were called Monin watches. So not Switzerland, but France, which is really interesting. And eventually they did come to be made in France, or to Switzerland. They moved them there. But this is an automatic watch. Most people will recognize the watch, and because after that it was the 980.006, aka the Jumbo. So it was a 42 millimeter quartz dive watch, and that was really the watch that saved Heuer from bankruptcy. And if you've read it, Jack Heuer did a really great autobiography. If you read it, you see how many times they were on the cusp of bankruptcy during the 1900s. It was a bit egregious. There were so many times, and this was one of those times, and it saved them from bankruptcy, that watch.
That's awesome.
And like I've said before in our previous conversations, like we will source the most period exact original watch, down to spec, whatever. But with my own watches, sometimes, I'll mix it up a bit. And like the bezel on this watch is a bezel that the watch never came with, but it fit. And so in a way it's modding it. Some people will view that as being heretical. That's fine. blasphemous as it may be, that this is for my enjoyment. I'm not wearing this to show off for anyone, but just for my own edification. So it literally has like alternating like red and black fonts and white font, and it has like a meter gauge on it. Like I just like the way it looks.
Yeah. Can you take it off wrist and hold it up to the camera real quick the best you
Sure,
can?
no problem.
I think
Yeah,
people would
and
love to see it.
and for the purists out there, I have the original bezel. It is beat to hell, but I still
Oh
do
yeah.
have
I
it.
mean, here's the thing, man. Like here at watchwilling.com, we always say, oh, look at that. Yeah, see? And that
I gotta
case is
wait. I gotta
classic.
try
You
and get it
know,
to. It's
oh,
not
you
really.
can get the
Oh, there
gist
it
of it. There
is.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you see.
classic case shape
Yeah.
on the Jubes style. But we always just say here at watchwilling.com, and by we, I mean me, because I'm the only one doing the show. Well, you know, wear what you want. You know,
Yeah.
it's so crazy, man. I just read so much stuff where people have comments like, dude, shut up. If the person likes it, that's what they want to wear. It's their freaking money, man. I had a samurai one time I bought off of I think it was Tommy from the Land Jam pod. He was selling a samurai with a doxa bezel.
I love that. I love that podcast. By the way, I've been in there.
Yeah, it's a great podcast, man. I love those guys. And Tommy and Sanji. And it's like, I bought it off him and I wore it for like 6 months, and then I eventually moved it on. It was cool though. It was a orange samurai,
yeah,
with a doxa bezel, and it worked. The whole thing worked. You know, it was my jam for a while. And I've since
no,
moved from samurais to cushion cases, but you know, that is what it is. Nick,
that was actually the post that we did today, where we took the still that Andrew from Time and Time posted, where it's like he kind of opens a conversation with, well, according to ChatGPT, and I kind of cringed. I was like, I hope you're not citing ChatGPT, but it was saying that like men wear it as nice watches as a performative to, in the parlance of our times, like with the Big Lebowski, to stunt.
Yeah.
On
Great movie,
people.
by
I
the
know
way.
my kids could hear that; they'd be cringing right now. But I disagree with that. Like, granted, my sample set is limited, but the vast majority of people that reach out to us because they want us to find something, they're not looking for a Rolex 16610 or something that a submariner that everyone knows is a status symbol. They're looking for an esoteric deep track piece that they're going to love, and they don't care what anybody else thinks. And I love that part.
Yeah,
I love it.
I saw that post, and here it is. Like, I don't know Mr. McCutcheon from Adam, but here's what I'll say. When he played video games, he wanted the cool skins, right? He wasn't, when I play video games, I'm like trying to go to the deepest, darkest cave and getting the diamond cut sword, right? With like a bonus 10,000 XP and gives me a cloak of like whatever, right? That's what I want. And then most of my buddies that I know, you know, I have buddies that are just into certain things, but I have buddies that are into deep cuts at a certain price point, right? And then I have other buddies that are in like the deep cuts, like so deep that you know, you wonder sometimes about their mental health. You're like, hey man, I'm here for you if you need any help, right? And for me, it's always been like, you know, my collection's relatively small now. I have my 16570 Polar Dial, right? Because I've always wanted one. And I thought to myself, if I love that one with the size that I have a 7 5/8 inch wrist, if I love that, then I'm going to eventually love the 216-570, right? I'd rather go more modern for the long haul because I'm not exactly old yet, and have that for a long period of time and then maybe pass it on, right? I have my Grand Seiko SPGA 231 because Grand Seiko is the jam and everyone's getting the pretty ones. I'm getting the diver. Titanium, come at me, bro.
Love it. Yeah.
And that one's never going anywhere. And then I got a couple, I got a Turtle and a Willard. And I know they're both cushion cases, but I don't put them in the same category because there's differences there, right? There's little nuanced differences.
Absolutely.
And then other than that, I got a bunch of watches sitting around that I can't find the right watch for this gold Longapo bracelet I got, but I'm going to do it one day.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to be awesome, right? So I get what you're saying in your post, because it's like, I've heard people say stuff and it's like, dude, like, why are you so invested in what someone else is wearing?
Yeah.
You know, like, just let people be and let them enjoy the hobby.
I get that some people are into that, and that's fine. Hey, look, as long as you're not talking down on anyone, you do you. That's fine. For me personally, if it weren't for the fact that we have social media accounts for the business, I wouldn't be posting wrist shots because I just, it's not, I don't really care about that. Like, I'm still involved in the local Los Angeles watch community. I'm still going to events and meetups and stuff like that. But as far as that performative aspect, some people can do that all I want. I'm fine with that. It's just not me.
Yeah. No, and I hear you. And that's something I've been going back and forth with too, is like, you know, if you're trying to be too many things at one time, you're never going to really be anything. And for me personally, you know what I mean? And so, you know, I've recently rekindled my love of photography.
Nice.
And I've realized that I'm a guy who's into watches, but I really do other stuff, you know, and it's like, which has been healthy for me as a veteran, right? Get some loves back into my life for things that I do that are solitary for me, and it's that I can see growth in, and I can get happiness with, and happiness from, and I think that's an important thing for everybody. It's kind of,
No,
you know,
the closest thing I have to a personal account is I have an Instagram account for my Isuzu Trooper, which
yeah,
we can talk
bro.
about later. But that's it. I literally
Yeah,
over the last week I've spent like 3 hours trying to diagnose why uh, out of the windshield wiper fluid nozzles, there's only windshield wiper fluid coming out of one of them, and it's like I know electrical stuff. Like I in high school, I used to install car audio systems as a side hustle. Like I know electric, and it's beguiling. Like it's
yeah,
frustrating the hell out of me. I'll get there, but yeah.
yeah.
Anyway,
I'm never, yeah, Joe. Never forget Joe Isuzu, man.
yeah,
Never
there you
forget.
go.
True, man. That's awesome. And speaking of funny trunks, I just came back from an extensive road trip to Vermont. I can't tell you how many Land Rovers
Yeah,
I saw being shipped up north
yeah, that
on
sounds about right.
flatbeds going north. It's crazy. It was at least 20 of them. But
Nice.
so Nick, you worked in some intelligence areas and stuff like that, and then telling us as much as you can within reason.
Sure.
And then
Yeah, you see, you
what did
get
you
that
do, and
better
how did
than
those? Sorry. What?
no. I'm saying you get that better than most podcast hosts, which is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Within
obviously
reason, bro.
you can only there's a security clearance there, which is no
Yeah.
longer active, but you understand.
But once you had one, you need
Yeah,
to STFU, right? And
yeah,
so if you could tell us what you did a little bit,
yeah,
and then
no
how
problem.
those skills transferred
Yeah,
into what you're currently doing now.
it was actually a bit surprising to me. I never thought about it until maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. A few years after I started the business, but so I started out, and I'm getting ahead of myself a bit, but I started out at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which NGA for the acronym, because DoD loves its acronyms, which is it falls under the writ of DoD writ large, and it looks at the interpretation of satellite imagery. So this is so the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO, operates all the spy satellites we have in orbit, including the ones for NSA. But NSA does signals intelligence, whereas NGA does IMINT or imagery intelligence. So my job was to be an imagery analyst, and specifically a military imagery analyst. So I basically was trained on recognizing every single aspect of military hardware, including American, because most of our adversaries are not using American unless they're Iran. But that's different. So for the most part, our adversaries are using Soviet equipment. So it's learning what all that equipment is, their capabilities, and how they look on imagery to include their measurements. Because sometimes you're measuring how big something is, and that's the difference between a Scud launcher, short range ballistic missile launcher, and something else. So I did that for 5 years, and that skill set, and this goes back to what I was saying before. I didn't realize at the time, but being trained as an imagery analyst actually helped me in interpreting imagery from sources other than spy satellites. For instance,
Yeah.
particularly if you're trying to determine fake watches from real watches. So you're looking for those tells that is the font a little bit too short? Is this different from the other one? Is the spacing on the dial different? And everyone can do that if they're given enough time. 100%. But in my business, you got to do it quickly because you're looking at thousands of watches every week. So you got to be able to tell quickly for it to be, time efficient. And my previous training really helped with that, and I did not realize that at first. So that was great. So after that, I did the White House Situation Room for 2 years, and that is a nonpartisan position. I am always quick to point out, given our fraught political times. And I came in under G.W. Bush, and I was there for about 4 to 5 months of his second term, and then about 2 years for the first Obama term. So there was just all sorts of just so many crises and just yeah, it was.
I bet.
I remember thinking distinctly, I was like, this may be the height of my government career, and in hindsight, I think I probably was correct
I
because
was
it's
active
it's
duty
just
at that time, and I can attest to
it's just
the
down from
crisis.
there. Like, but it was a great time while I had it. It's like I had a parking spot on the Ellipse. This will be the first time I've ever admitted it. I lived in DC proper. I had an Acura Integra GSR. I like cars, as you can tell, and I couldn't park on I didn't like parking on the street in DC because you have to move it because of street cleaning. There were time limits. DC is notorious for giving tickets for arbitrary reasons. So I parked on the ellipse and I left it there, and I would walk home because it was like a 10-minute commute to where I lived in DC proper, and it was protected by the Secret Service. So it was
Nice.
kind of awesome. So I missed the hell out of the perks. I mean, there were so many times where like I just remember walking around at 2 a.m. in the morning, the East Wing, the West Wing, whatever. Secret Service, you have the right badge. They don't care who you are. If anything, eventually you become friends with them because they're bored at 2 a.m. on a weeknight too. So you're just shooting the shit with them. If there's
Yeah.
literally nothing blowing up in the world, you can do whatever you want. You got your cell phone on you. If your senior duty officer needs you to get your butt back to the situation room, he's going to text you and you're going to go back. We actually use Blackberries then too, which is also a way of dating that time period because who's using Blackberries these days, really?
Great keyboards, man.
Yeah,
Blackberries, great
exactly,
keyboards.
exactly.
And the
So,
Acura Integra, an underappreciated car.
so much so. I regret. I think I bought it for 9,000. I sold it for 5,000, and I did all the stereotypical like exhaust, lowered stance, handling, eye-box springs, all that fun stuff. Again, I'm well suited for Southern California. Even before I lived out here, I've always been into cars. That's not a new thing. But I actually regret selling that car massively because I know it's worth quite a bit more than 5,000 now. But
Oh yeah.
it is what it is.
So an interesting thing you brought up about how the imagery stuff and how
Yeah.
having to get the stuff identified quickly. I think that's something that people don't recognize.
Hmm.
I think they understand it, but they don't truly understand about whether you're military or military adjacent or something in that kind of line of work. How quickly you have to take in information, collate information, and then formulate some kind of answer for someone to make a decision on, right? And it's something that we do consistently, right?
Oh yeah.
Constantly.
Oh yeah.
And so when you transition to the civilian work life, flow, the onus is on there. But I think a nugget for us is that, well, no one's gonna die, right? If I don't
Well,
analyze this watch correctly, no one's gonna die.
well,
Hopefully.
in life writ large, as we like to say, it depends.
Yeah.
Because I mean, think about it. I mean, this is like, for instance, you get into the intelligence community, and then after the sit room, I was a diplomat, which we can get into. But they teach you this mindset where like you're used to living the world in like if you think of a stoplight in green, so everything is go whatever. You're walking on the street, unless you're crossing the street, you're buried in your phone, you're not paying attention. But like your life now is constant yellow light, and that is being aware of your surroundings, being situationally aware, particularly if you're overseas, and looking for things that are out of place. That is, again, that's true whether you're Intel, whether you're Department of State overseas, because some people don't like America. It
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
it is. For some of them are legit reasons, some of them definitely not.
Oh yeah.
This is something
No,
that you
yeah, and I
bear
was
with.
I was I was talking about like when you're analyzing the literal watch,
Of course.
right? So
Yeah, 100%.
haven't done those real decisions before. Now when you're looking at a watch, it's probably nice to have a little nugget like, well, maybe I can take an extra minute on this
Yeah.
watch because there's not going to be life or death repercussions if I don't quite get this watch right or if I take a little bit longer. Because I think that's something that a lot of us do. Like we make quick decisions, but we take in a lot of information. And I always joked around like, sometimes I got to make an 80% decision. And if it turns
Yeah,
out
I
80%
love
right,
that term. I've never heard it outside the government either. I very rarely
yeah,
the 80% solution, which I definitely 100%. And I know that like, for instance, like on eBay, like sometimes you do need that extra time because eBay is great if you know what you're looking for and you know what you're doing. But if you don't, it's a minefield. And there's obviously some self interest in me saying that. But again, you don't have to get anything from us. Just do your research and know what you're looking at before you hit that bid button. You know what I mean? But like you're saying, like I know as a bit of an aside, but related, I remember when I was thinking because NGA at the time you had to do a 24/7 ops rotation. I don't know what the rule is now. In the situation room was that for me. So for the uninitiated, there is a great Wikipedia write up. So I definitely recommend people looking that up, the White House Situation Room. But it is basically a bunch of small, not even many, but like half a dozen plus small teams of people that are on watch in an operations center for 12-hour shifts, and then they trade off 24/7. So I had to do that situation. I had to do that op store. But one of my other choices was, and I'm not going to give anything away here because I don't actually know. I had a friend from NGA that did the CIA operations center And she was like, you should think about it. So I looked at it. I talked to some people there, and they're like, yeah, you'd be great for this program. And they were like, well, what is the program? They're like, well, we can't tell you unless you accept the position. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. I strongly speculate, in the loosest of terms, it was something with predators, the predator drones. But like, there's that thing where like you're making that they wanted people that had done imagery on the fly to make those split decisions if a target opportunity presented itself. But like, because they wouldn't tell me, I'm like, well, I don't want to. I mean, it's the White House. Like, I'm gonna go work in the White House. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, no, it's
so
crazy, man, because like even in firefighting, like, you know,
yeah,
simple things like what are
totally.
you getting, you know, what color smoke or what do you smell or,
Well, that's
you know, et
crazy.
cetera, et cetera. I'm like, and you're having to do this stuff with like, you know, it's loud, you can barely hear because you got a bunch of gear on, you know, like it's nuts, man. And you probably just like on a ship, you know what I mean? It's nuts because you might have just come from like your lunch is halfway finished, right? So you get like spaghetti sauce on your face or you just
You're
woke
still
up.
tasting it in your
Yeah.
mouth, and you're
You know what I mean?
on a
And
tangent going
you're like,
somewhere.
oh, it's black smoke, blah,
That's
blah, blah. You know what
wild.
I mean? It's nuts. So I think it's
That's a whole different
interesting.
level. Yeah, that's a whole different level.
Yeah. I mean, they're all in the same neighborhood, right? They're all in the same neighborhood of decision making. So okay, so we've talked about obscure watches, researching the backstories. How do you and the rest of the team at DCVW go about researching? And then are there any sources, or unless that's giving away stuff, but like any sources that you find most reliable that you could actually recommend to a viewer?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, some of it just comes down to good old fashioned knowing how to use Google and using it well. I mean, like in more the IT sector, they're not IT per se, but there's a term called Google dorking, where it means like you, for instance, like if you want to search on a certain site, you can do a Google string, which will look at just the stuff contained within that actual site and not the broader internet, which can narrow down the search dramatically and save time. So it's like there's tricks like that, which I have. I mean, we talk about things from a previous career, like Department of State, working there doing, or even NGA doing research and things like that. Those research standard operating procedures, the SOPs, as we both know from our DoD days, carries over, and it's a massive time saver. So it's things like Google, but it's also like I'm trying to think like, and I've talked about this before. Like, if I want to know what bracelet went with what watch, I'm going to do a Google image search. And sometimes it's like, as like, this is not very scientific, but if the vast majority of the images that pop up with that watch model you searched has one type of bracelet on it, that's probably the bracelet it came with originally. And that's great for a further refining of the terms to find the exact answer you're looking for.
So have you faced any huge challenges, or do you have like big challenges that you face sourcing? I mean, the original question was vintage Seiko, but at this point, like any
Yeah.
vintage watch
Yeah.
with the high accuracy and provenance.
Yeah, I think, and I've joked about this with, and there's not many of them, but some of these more diehard citizen collectors, where like we will constantly joke about like I try to get citizen in the shop as much as possible, but sometimes I just don't because there's such a dearth of information on them especially when compared to something like Seiko. And I honestly like, I think that's a massive disservice because I think Citizen has amazing watches from that exact same era that is the heyday of vintage Seiko, i.e., really the late '60s and the entirety of the entirety of the '70s. And so it the hardest thing for me, I think, is when you have an amazing looking watch, it looks great, and you can't find anything on it. Like that's maddening to me. Like we're not the website, as you can tell. Sometimes we put too much on a listing, but it is what it is. I'm not going to do a listing up there where like it's a watch and there's like 5 lines of text and it's all about condition and there's no backstory, there's no history, there's no anything. Like I don't want to sell a watch like that. And it's not just because the stories do sell things, and that's true in any industry, but it's because I want people to understand like this watch is half a century old and it made it this far, and you should buy it because of X. You know, for legit reasons, not made up. That's frustrating to me when I can't find, because it's been around a half century. There's got to be something cool, and when I can't find that, it drives me crazy. But like sometimes that's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, I have buddies that shout out to the guys in the Spring Bar podcast. They're all, you know, super into Belova, Caravel,
Yep, yep, yep.
Accutron, and you know, they've had whole conversations about how big Belova's catalog is,
Yeah,
and just like there's just large swaths of time where they didn't account or document anything. It was
yeah,
just like the wild, wild west, right? And like there's this case, number, case shape, and it's got this dial reference, but then some were sold on a strap and some were sold on a bracelet. But there's differences based off where they sold in Europe or where they sold in Japan, and then trying to find the information to get there because they're really into that stuff. It can be difficult. And they've even like interviewed some of the brass from Belova who have said like, hey, there's periods of time where we just didn't do the greatest job accounting for what we did. And I think that's crazy because it's one of my big fears about vintage in general, which is why I
Yeah.
appreciate websites like yours and businesses like yours and other ones that give me more than just a K shape, the crystal type. They give me more information than that because it's like, okay, cool. If someone did that much due diligence, and it just adds to the trustworthiness for me
And that's
as
some of the
a
reason why we
consumer.
do it, is really to tell that story. But like Belova especially, but in and I would almost, just speculating, I would almost bet that there's a lot of maybe some of the time that they didn't document extensively was during the quartz crisis when they were just trying to stay alive. You know what I mean? Where they had to lay people off, they had to slim down budgets because they were just ironically trying to compete with this new innovation from Seiko, which was the quartz watch, and they just didn't. And again, I mean that is a time that I worry about in our own industry now, is because that was something that was brought on by tariffs at the time, because it made the American market this insular, like they didn't feel like they needed to innovate because they were protected by tariffs. So they didn't have to compete because no one was buying Swiss stuff because the tariffs were so high. And that's kind of where we find ourselves now. So I worry about, like, just as, and think about it. When's the last time you really heard of an American? I mean, even Belova is not American owned anymore. But when's the last time you really heard of like an American watch company that wasn't independent or a micro brand? I mean, Weiss Watches comes to mind. They're doing amazing stuff right now. Definitely check them out if you guys haven't.
But you're
But
talking about volume. Like there's no volume.
exactly,
I'm
it's
like
just it's
there's an
not
excellent
there.
there's an excellent podcast, Spycraft 101, and Justin
Yeah,
from
I'm familiar.
Spycraft
Yeah,
101.
yeah,
He did that whole episode on Waltham and how basically the
yeah.
Swiss,
That's right.
like,
That's right.
like
Yeah,
go listen to it. The
yeah.
Swiss watch industry
I
sent an
have the book. I'm
American,
looking at it.
yeah,
Yep, I have
sent
the
an
book.
American dude over there to the World's Fair and basically gave away Waltham's whole mass manufacturing. But the next time that Swiss try to act all like, oh, we're nice, nope,
Yeah,
they're shady too, and
yeah.
they send a bunch of people to basically steal the mass production thing.
I mean, it's
It,
interesting because I mean, look, I'm not saying that Seiko is altruistic and they've never done shady
no,
stuff. I don't
yeah,
know. I'm sure they have at some point. I love
everyone's probably
Seiko,
done it.
but let's be honest,
Yeah,
it's some of it's human nature. But I know early on they went to some of Ford's, and they didn't do this in a surreptitious. They did this openly. They asked to tour Ford's factories to see how they did their assembly lines, and they emulated some of that in how they made watches, which really hadn't been done on that large a scale at that point. And that was some of the reason for their early successes with mechanical watches before the quartz came along. But I mean, no, I mean, I worry about that now because you just see American watch manufacturers starting to slightly come back. And this is, I mean, we're half a
yeah,
century on and they really haven't, and so I worry about what that means another half century from now.
yeah. No, and it's true because it's like I know there's a bunch of brands who are trying to bring this back to the States, right?
Yeah.
Different levels. You got SEL, and then you even have like Jack Mason and
Yeah.
all Notice and a bunch of brands, right? But it's like from a basic business model, and I don't have a business degree, but like I balance a checkbook, like I would infer that, you make some designs, you get some sales, you take some of that money and you put it back into maybe hopefully your own R&D, right? How would I eventually get to the
Yes.
point to where I make my own movement, I make my own cases, I
In
make this, I
house.
make that, do it in house, right? And then, you'd have to take that money and then reinvest it back to continue to do that, right? Because there's a whole system, man. It's like a system of systems. It's like wheels within wheels kind of thing.
I mean,
And
even with the Sycamore line, I mean, like the majority of the stuff was sourced in the United States, but the movement is Seiko because I had no viable alternative. And I would love, I really, and I've talked about this for a year plus now. Like, I would love our next watch to be some sort of, again, super esoteric. I don't care if they're if they are a runaway success. I just want to make it. I want to put it out there, and that would be like a regatta watch. And I have been stymied up until recently. I'm actually chasing some stuff now that's promising, but to find a mechanical chronograph movement that wasn't quartz because it's not there. I mean, there's some new stuff, thankfully. So that is, I'm finally starting to make some headway in that. But for a year, I just kind of forgot about it because I just couldn't find any.
Yeah. It's a real thing. And it's, I hope to be around long enough to see something, because I think that's pretty cool. I mean, the art of it is so much. I mean, because you have schools like the Veterans Watchmakers Initiative that teach veterans the art of watchmaking, right? And they do the whole watch technician course and the watchmaker course. And that was founded by Joseph P. Belova. But then some of the other schools are for profit and et cetera, et cetera. So, it's a multi-pronged approach to ever bring watchmaking back to the States. That's my point. Like, you need the people that know how to do it. You need the industry to be able to do it, right? Because at a certain point, like, not everybody can be name any brand where they're making one or two watches, at a time. Like, no one, not everybody can be that, right?
I mean,
And
you look at Weiss watches. Cameron Weiss, he did his training in Switzerland proper. It took years. I mean, this is not something you can just snap your fingers and ramp up. Like, this is a legit art, and it takes years to perfect,
yeah,
if not
and
decades.
like you were talking about, like, when you were doing the Sycamore stuff about, I'm sure you were getting case designs in, or the different iterations they were sending you in to look at, and you're like, well, this isn't quite right. You have to send it back and then get this tailored up. And imagine doing that yourself. I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit quicker because you're at the bench yourself, but now you have to make a change to one that you're going to have to make to 50 by yourself, right? If you want to sell like 100 watches or something, it's got to be crazy. So you talked about sourcing these watches and the long stories. So how do you, as a brand or a company, balance emotional, sentimental value of a watch with the actual market value or investment potential? Because I got to believe you get asked those questions.
But yeah, no, it's and then to further complicate that is, how do I not keep it for myself? You know, as in, like, how do I source a watch and I look into the history and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. Then it's like, crap, now I want it. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
it's like a constant danger. I think I joke about, but it's real actually. The blue dialed Stellaris skin diver that we just posted, that I just posted a few days ago on Instagram, is a prime example of that. I bought that to sell, but I really like it, so I kept it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that's not a Rolex that costs 10K. This is
Yeah.
sub $500 watch. It's that's realistic. No, I on your question itself. Do you mean, like, is there?
I
I
mean, because
guess,
I
like,
got to believe you get those questions from, like, you guys. So you guys get a watch in, right? And there's a cool story behind this watch. And then that sentiment could be of value to someone that wants to buy it, right? But then maybe the customer either doesn't take that into account enough or takes it into account too much, especially if they're trying to sell you a watch, right? For your stock. How do you balance that? It
yeah.
sounds
So
like it's got to be kind of touchy thing to do.
it can be, like, as we do get better known, we do have more people reaching out offering watches for sale, and most people understand that we're not some random person on a forum or what, on an eBay or what have you. Like, we have overhead to meet. We've got marketing, we've got salaries, we got to pay for watchmakers. We've got a lot of stuff. Like, the price point that we're going to sell something at versus the price point that you can sell something on eBay are going to be different. Ours will be, and I always make that. I always tell people, and the people that work here tell people, look, you're going to get more money if you sell this on eBay. You're also going to have to deal with the headaches that
Yeah,
come
yeah.
with selling on eBay.
Yes. And they're going to get you for
The well-versed
13%.
notaries. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
they're going to
Yeah,
get you for
there's
13.5%. See,
that.
and that's the
Exactly.
thing. That's the thing I always tell my buddies about, because they're always like, why'd you go there? I'm like, dude, I don't, it saved me hours of my life. And like, my hourly rate's like $50 an hour. Like, so you're
Yes.
going to,
And
you're going to
yeah.
tell me that I'm going to waste 16 hours trying to save $100. You're out of your mind. That's a waste of my
as
time.
as people get older, they realize their time, and the smart people realize it way longer than I ever did. Their time is
Yeah.
worth money, and
Yeah.
there's an opportunity cost there that you're going to pay. And when people reach out to us, I make it clear, like, look, you're not, you're going to get less, but it's also going to be vastly much. It's going to be vastly more simple than it would be selling wherever, and someone trying to nickel and dime you over a hair or something, like a hairline scratch or something like that is invisible only under a loop. But no, so that is there, and most people totally understand that. On occasion, people don't, and they get angry, but that's pretty rare. We're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's
Yeah.
eyes or anything like that. Like, we are a business. At some point, we do have to make a profit to remain viable as a business. I have a family to support. I mean, that's the reality of it. So that has to, back to your question, that has to outweigh the emotional thing. And a lot of the pieces that we really know a lot of the history on. I'm thinking the Seiko 6139 Pogue, the Seaver, Bruce Lee, or the Seiko 6309 Diver. You know that history, and we know very well now because we almost always have one in the shop. If we sell it, we have another one back within a few weeks. We know what the market will bear on that, and we're going to price it accordingly, despite the backstory being amazing on all these. We're not going to try and take advantage of everyone just for the backstory. Like, we're going to put what we think, at least, is a fair price given the money we have in it, the overhead we have to meet, etc.
Yeah. And I think, I think the word value is one of those weird words that it's equally objective and subjective, right? Something can literally have more value, right? Like something could be worth more. But then again, like if you're talking about sentimentality, so, and how it feels, it makes someone feel, a $200 watch that's been verified to be accurate, to be what it's supposed to be, you really can't quantify that value to the person that finds it on your website and gets it, right? Who reads the whole write-up, reads the whole story, and when it comes in and they're just sitting there, that's a Daytona to them. You know what I mean? Like it really is. And Daytonas to some people are freaking F91Ws.
Yeah,
They don't care.
Totally.
To some people, they have them. They're like, whatever, I got like 5 of these. You want one? Kind of thing. I'm not that guy, but you know what I mean? Like,
No,
because
I get that all the time when I explain to people what I do for a living, and they'd be like, "The watch is $1,000? That's crazy!" And I'm like, "You're not looking at the whole picture here.
Yeah.
Like, it's much deeper levels to it."
It's funny, because I'm the watch guy at work. So as people ask me questions and as they get into it, you know how it is. The $500 is the first threshold.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, you spend $500 on a watch? And then as they start to learn stuff, they're like, I can't believe that watch is only $700. That's great.
Yeah.
And then people are like, what? That's a lot of money. And the guy's like, no, man, it's got blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, see, I told you. I'm like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like $500 is like, you can get some pretty good stuff for $500, but and then there's like the weird zone of like $1,500, like I call the Dead Sea. Like, like there's not a lot, there's like almost no choices because there's too many choices kind of thing. But anyways, so Nick, with all this experience, you've been around for about close to 15 years. How do you see the vintage watch market evolving over the next 5 to 10 years, particularly for niche references and brands like Seiko?
I think that the elephant in the room are tariffs. I'm not making any political statement on that. I think that will shape a lot of decision making going forward. And I actually had someone the other day, God bless him, but he was like, "Oh, I thought that only was for new watches." I was like, "That's like literally, look, 50% of our business is sourcing watches for people. Someone will reach out. Obviously, this is a shameless plug for our watch sourcing service, but someone is going to reach out. Here's a vintage watch I want. It's either like I'm trying to identify it, or my dad had it, my grandfather had it, whatever. Here's the picture, whatever. Here's a price range for the watch. We can do it, we can't do it, etc." I had to email, and I'm still in the process of doing it, a bunch of people that we are presently looking Swiss watches for, and say, "Hey, we are limiting our sources, or we are limiting the place that we look for these watches to the United States only, unless you want to pay that 39% tariff that is on Swiss watches." So most people, actually, I think all but one are like, "Hey, I'm fine with waiting longer. As long as it means I don't have to pay that 39%, I'm all for it." Sorry, I just realized there was an alarm going off.
It's okay. I just thought it was an ice cream truck or something
outside. Yeah, that's what my wife makes fun of me.
You know what I mean?
Like, it sounds like. Sorry about that.
Hey, listen, anyway, at watchrolling.com, we understand technical things and dogs. We're accepting.
That was actually for an eBay auction, believe it or not. But nice. I already put in my high bid, so I'm good. eBay is one of the places we look, of course. But no, so there's going to be, tariffs are going to play a role in that. And there's going to be legal ways around tariffs, I'm sure, and some of those are still being discovered. But the reality is that it will drive some people out of business, particularly not necessarily in the vintage market. I don't think it's really going to affect us as bad as it affects the micro brands, the independent brands, where it just completely upsets their entire book that they, that you were talking about balancing a checkbook. It's going to completely upset that. If it hasn't already, it definitely will. I know a lot of people are holding out for a better rate, hoping for a better rate on Swiss stuff, but that might not come. I'm just thankful that, and we had a post on this recently, like, look, Japanese, for Japan, it's 15%. We'll eat that. That's fine. Well, it sucks. It is what it is. I've had a lot of people reach out like, "Hey, are you flexible in this price for something you have on your website?" Before I'd say yes. Now it's not really because we're already eating the 15%. You're already getting, and it's not vindictive on my part. It's just like this is the reality that comes with being a small businessman or any businessman in the United
Yeah.
States at present. But on the Swiss stuff, I said, "Hey, thankfully for us, we don't really specialize in Swiss watches. Although I know Omega and Hoyer are, but you look at our website, 60% of the 70% of the stuff is going to be Seiko. But vintage market as a whole, I think will survive. I think it will. I don't think it'll necessarily drive people out of business in the vintage market. I think it will dissuade some people from entering in it once they realize what it's like dealing with the tariffs. Because it's not just. It used to be you could get stuff from overseas with what we call EMS, which is EMS is a catch-all term for like other countries' USPS equivalent. And for instance, there's a great supply house in the UK called Cousins. And I get a lot of crystals from them. They're German crystals. They're called Stern Cruise, whatever, for vintage watches. Before the tariffs, I was paying £14 for shipping. Now, because of the tariffs, people will only ship stuff to the United States via UPS or FedEx or DHL. So instead of £13, I'm paying £50 for shipping. And
Yeah.
then I have to pay tariffs on top of that. So I spent $80, it was $80 US in some crystals. The total bill came to $200. So it adds up, and that's again, I'm not complaining.
No,
I don't
you're just
like it,
stating the
but
facts.
that's
Yeah.
that's the reality. I want to stay in business. I got to find a way to deal with it.
Yeah.
You
No,
got
I
to tweak
stopped
the
doing.
budget or do whatever.
I had to politely turn down reviews from watches out of state, out of country, because even though it was something being sent for me to send back, I was getting hit on the way in and hit on the way out. It's like, no, I'm
Yeah,
good. Sorry. And I'm not trying to, no, I'm just not trying to eat it. So
yeah.
this is
And
a
I felt bad for Cousins because I sent him an email. I was like, look, thank you for explaining patiently why it was so expensive. You guys have been great to me, but I got to source these elsewhere from now on because it's just too expensive. And they
yeah,
understood. It is what it is.
yeah. That's awesome when people are understanding. You can have good business because if everything changes, you still have a good business relationship, and no one
Exactly.
burned any bridges. So in
Exactly.
a first for the Watch William podcast, I have an Instagram question from a buddy of mine who is at a marine and his wrist on Instagram. He wanted to know, are there any recently discontinued models that should be purchased now if we want them versus waiting? Like he specifically references SKX is shooting up in price, but he's wondering if you think there's anything else that would be a good buy now for the future.
Yeah, so the SKX thing at first was a mystery to me, like this massively popular line. Why did you discontinue? But I understand that Seiko in the past, particularly with their what they call, which my kids laugh at, the SUS or the SUS line, which I forget what the acronym stands for, but it was like they did all this research. They looked at this is what the younger generation is looking for, so we're going to market our watches towards them. So when they get older, we build that brand loyalty, so they will pay for more expensive things like Grand Seiko, etc. And I think that's what they did by discontinuing SKX in favor of the Seiko 5, which is, in my opinion, very much inferior technically to the SKX. It is what it is. As far as what your friend asked, and I'm not going to remember the model numbers, but I know the vintage model numbers. So it's going to be the oh wow, am I really going to believe it? So the 6106 8000, the GMT, that they came out with a reissue on that, which was a spot on reinterpretation of the original. Very faithful. I loved it. And it's one of those few things where they come out with a reissue and it's actually less expensive than the vintage one. Because
Oh
the
wow,
vintage one of those, for a ragged example, just terrible, it's going to be at least 1,000. For a really good
oh, wow,
example, you're looking at 2K, and the reissues are like, I want to say $800, something like that. That's one. The other one is a similar 6106, and it is what was euphemistically referred to in collector circles as the Gene Kranz. And they just came out with the reissue. And again, I don't remember the model number, but I mean, we can probably add that after we post this later in the notes. But it's like a steel gray dial and also a white dial. And I actually found myself bidding on one of the reissue. I lost because I was lowballing because I was just like, it's more
yeah,
frivolous for me. But I was like, that's how faithful the reinterpretation was of that watch. They did a fantastic job on it.
awesome.
And
Yeah,
those are
yeah.
the
Just
two that I would recommend.
Shoot me the links and then I'll put them in the
I
show notes
will.
before I
Yeah, yeah,
publish
yeah.
this.
I will. But those are the two that I would recommend. Again, I'm going to be biased towards vintage because that's my love.
Yeah, it's your
So,
jam.
yeah, yeah.
It's your jam. Listen, I love hot tortillas with peanut butter on them. You know, I'm going to advocate for those things all the time. So, what advice would you give someone that's just getting into collecting vintage watches, who wants to build a collection with some meaning and not just value?
Yeah, no, so it's always, first of all, like, personally for me, like, and I always, when people, I don't really get this that much anymore. During the pandemic, I got it a lot, where there was, I don't want to say they were crypto bros per chance, but they were definitely crypto bro like, where they had a bunch of money, they wanted to throw it at something in an investment, and I was like, look, don't do it here. Get a good ETF, get a stock, whatever. Don't look at watches for investment unless you're dealing with maybe Rolex, and even then,
Yeah,
just like vintage Seiko, that is its own minefield where
yeah,
there's tons of fakery going on. You got to know what you're looking for or have a very trusted dealer. Which brings it to the next point, and that is those two cliche canards remain true. And that is do your research and trust the buyer, or trust the seller, rather. I mean, you don't even need that second part. You can buy it on your own. Just make sure you do the research. And Google is your friend, but in all honesty, in our very busy lives, and we talked about this before, time is literally money. As you get older, you have kids, whatever, you're pulled in 100 different directions. Sometimes you don't have the time to invest in that research, and that's fine. Just make sure you buy that seller. And again, it doesn't have to be us. Just make sure you look at what they have on offer, look at what their reputation is, etc. Those are the big things for me. And then, you know, don't buy because it's serviced, buy because of condition, because you can always get it serviced later. And this is not revelatory advice, that part right there. I've heard Eric Wynn say that dozens of times on his podcast and just in articles. It remains true because you can get it serviced, you can't turn back the time condition wise
yeah,
on something. I think that's huge here. And then once you get that, don't have it be a safe queen perchance. Like wear it.
yeah,
Make your memories with it. Wear the watch. Remember, and you will always remember the watch you were wearing when you were first kid, your second kid, when you got that promotion, when you retired, like whatever.
yeah,
You will always remember it for that. And that is the legend on that watch when you pass it down, and you will. It doesn't even have to be your kids. It could be a niece, a nephew, whatever, someone you're mentoring. The possibilities are
matter.
endless. And it
That's
set
awesome.
that next chapter, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, our hour is almost up. I try to keep it on a strict timeline. Is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to let anybody know, socials or anything like that before we go?
Sure. No, and this is more of a, again, I didn't see it out there, so I brought it into being, and this is a, and I'll hold the ad up right now, but this is, everyone remembers these vintage ads. We also sell vintage ads. Not trying to take any of
Nice.
Ed Patina's fire. Never. They do amazing stuff. But we do it as an aside because people ask for it. But you see the format. So I wanted to see that format for Seikos and make it a sticker. So we did that recently, and we came out with 4 stickers. And we have the if you were going to explore the cosmos tomorrow, you'd wear a Seiko. Or like we have one for Bruce Lee, one for Mac v Sog, and then there's one for Francois Sever, the famous F1 driver. So we came out with that recently. Once we recoup costs, which were not much, all the profit's going to go towards charities. And whenever we sell a Mac v Sog or a Bruce Lee watch, a portion of those profits also go to charities. And we're talking either Asian American Pacific Islander charities like TAAF, the Asian American Fund. Things like the third option is Watches of Espionage. Shout out to
Yeah.
them.
Yep. I know
Also
exactly
donates
what
to
they
the
are.
third option, which benefits the Special Activities. Well, it used to be Special Activities Divisions, but now Special Activities Mission Center. Basically, these former Special Forces operators that are running with CIA case officers to do their missions. So it benefits not only them while they're living, but if the worst happens, they become a star on that wall. It's supporting their families and medical bills or internment or scholarships, etc. So it goes a worthy cause. I just wanted to see it out there. So that's my plug right there.
That's
for those
awesome.
stickers. That's on the
We'll
website.
make sure. We'll make sure all that stuff's in the show notes. Any last nuggets, Nick?
That's all I got. I don't have much wisdom. I think I already imparted what I had.
I think you provided quite a bit in the last hour, and I appreciate it. I know the audience will too. Well, thanks for joining us, Nick. I appreciate it. Look forward to some future chats. And everyone, check out DC Vintage Watches. And remember, at watchwilling.com, you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.